Hello, welcome to the podcast. This is the Royal Rota from ITV. We are back, and thank you to Lizzie for looking after the podcast last week. How was it?
It was nice. It was nice to be joined by
Nice that I wasn't there.
Peter and Reese, but it is obviously lovely that you are back, was what I was going to say.
It was nice that you weren't here, was actually what you meant.
No.
Welcome. This is the Royal Rota. I'm Chris Ship, the Royal Editor at ITV. Lizzie is Lizzie Robinson,
The royal producer.
And the King is 42 days into his reign, and we now know, as a result of the events of this lunchtime, that he's going to have his second Prime Minister within a week.
Yeah, it was on the 6th of September, wasn't it, that we were a very, very rainy Balmoral for that moment where Boris Johnson went to resign to the late Queen and Liz Truss was appointed Prime Minister. That was just 44 days ago, and here we are, and there is going to be a new Prime Minister. She has tendered her resignation, and next week we will have her successor.
It's not quite clear at the moment how they're going to get a successor so quickly, given that over the summer the Conservative Party spent about 19,000 weeks trying to choose between Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, chose Liz Truss, and now she's resigned. I mean, it's not actually very funny, is it? I mean, it's a complete and utter chaos at Westminster. I mean,
yeah, absolute chaos. The King has only had 2 weekly audiences with Liz Truss. He had his first last week. He had his second last night, Wednesday night. We recorded this on a Thursday.
Should we listen to what happened on the first one?
Let's listen.
Your Majesty, lovely to see you again.
Back again.
Oh, it's a great pleasure.
Oh dear. Anyway, no, I never know how much they wanted to.
So that was the King meeting Liz Truss on their first one. And obviously you don't normally have these things recorded on camera or pictures taken because these weekly audiences happen all the time. But they do allow the very, very first one to be recorded. Now, look, who are we to say what did King Charles mean when he said, "Dear, oh dear"?
Back again, dear, oh dear.
Lots of people have been picking up on that and saying that's because of the chaos going on. Equally, there was another version of events which we are told that he was just feeling a little bit sympathetic towards her because she'd already been at Buckingham Palace earlier on that day for a Privy Council meeting, and she was back again for the weekly audience. But nevertheless, the words "dear, oh dear," when put in the context of everything going on in Westminster, I think people clearly put 2 and 2 together. So the Queen had, 15 Prime Ministers?
15 Prime Ministers.
In her 70 years.
She did.
The King, Charles III, will be on his second.
By the end of next week.
By the end of next week. So 50 or so days into his reign, he's going to have his second Prime Minister. I mean, I'm kind of losing the ability to describe the events of this year. I mean, we thought it was remarkable, and it was remarkable that we had a week in which we had a new Prime Minister and a new monarch, and now we've got a new monarch, and he's having a secondary Prime Minister within just a matter of 50 days. I mean,
an absolutely extraordinary year.
Extraordinary. The King got the phone call from Liz Truss when he was at Buckingham Palace. He was having a couple of audiences. One was with the High Commissioner of Pakistan. One was with the Ambassador of Ukraine, and they'd been in to see the King this morning. That letters of recall thing, I always find that wording very strange. His letters of recall to the Court of St James. In other words, hello, I'm the new Ambassador for Ukraine, or hello, I'm the new High Commissioner for Pakistan. But St James is the senior palace, and therefore the ambassador is always represented at the court of St James. In fact, I saw that, I digress here, but I saw that at the American Embassy recently. It's actually written in the wall of the new American Embassy about those representatives to the court of St James. Anyway, so he's getting on with his work, but he's now got to find some time in his schedule next Friday to welcome a new Prime Minister.
It does. Now, while you were away, we had a date was set for the coronation, and we didn't talk about it last week because we were talking about all things to do with the 4 nations.
Yes. No.
But we can talk about the coronation this week.
Because there was some speculation it was going to be on the 3rd of June, which was very, very close to the 2nd of June when the Queen had her coronation in 1953.
Very, very close.
Very close, kind of
to
like
the 2nd of June. So
years.
the 2nd of June this year would have been the 70th anniversary of the Queen's coronation. She had her coronation in 1953, even though she came to the throne in 1952. Now, there would have been a problem with the 3rd of June.
FA Cup final?
The FA Cup final. So now, in considering a date, you have to consider lots of things, I suppose. Diaries, weather, sporting events, other big events. So they have settled on Saturday, May 6th.
Now, there's not a lot you can do about the weather, because I do know, and I wasn't alive at the time, as much as I may look it, that the Queen's coronation was on a very cold and wet June day. You can't guarantee the weather will be good in May or June, but that is at least the anticipation.
The ambition is there.
Yes, indeed. But interesting that the phrases that Buckingham Palace used when they were talking about the coronation, that it would obviously steeped in history, blah blah blah. You still get the holy, anointed with holy oil and all the rest of it, and the Queen Consort will be crowned alongside the King, but they want it to reflect, where the monarchy exists in the modern day, which I thought was quite an interesting way of trying to say, yes, it will be very old, but we'll try and modernise it if we can.
Yeah, reflect the spirit of our times, whilst also keeping it rooted in tradition and pageantry. I think.
Is that possible? I mean, look at everything we saw over the Queen's funeral. Can you ever say any of that was modern, really? I mean, it's rooted in the past, clearly. And if you're going to anoint someone with holy oil because they have been chosen by God to be the new monarch, it kind of doesn't feel very modern to me.
Perhaps
then monarchy isn't.
The spirit of our times is the current climate that we are in. This is said to have been, it will retain its core elements of the traditional service, but it will be smaller on scale and shorter. So a sort of recognition about the times that we are in.
And we are in very different times and difficult times indeed. And obviously with the cost of living crisis, which is particularly acute in the UK, particularly given events in the government in recent weeks, I think the King will be very... he will want to recognise that, people are having a difficult time, and therefore, should you really be having big, lavish ceremonies, so I kind of think he will try and cut back where he can, or at least let it be known that he has slimmed things down where possible.
I think it will also be very reflective and inclusive of a multi-faith Britain.
Because he's not only the defender of the faith and the supreme governor of the Church of England, but he wants to represent, as he said in that, didn't he? He said in his speech when he became king, the day after the death of his mother, that he wants to represent all faiths.
I think that's something that's very important to the king, but it's also something that's incredibly important to the country in reflecting the United Kingdom.
Of course, we all know about the Queen's coronation, the first to be televised. We saw the Queen Elizabeth II, at her coronation being crowned. It will feel very different this time, having a king and a queen being crowned at the coronation ceremony, which hasn't happened since 1936, when King George VI and Queen Elizabeth were then Queen Mother, or 37, wasn't it? Because it was yes, he came to the throne so late in 36 that the coronation was the year after. But we haven't seen a king and a queen be crowned in this way since then.
No, we haven't. The May the 6th date, there's also something else that's relevant about May the 6th. I said it didn't clash with lots of other things, but it does clash with someone's birthday.
Ooh, very good. George, Charlotte, Louis, and William, Kate.
You're just going to list all members
Princess
of
Anne, Prince Edward,
the royal family, and it will be Archie's 4th birthday.
Okay, I didn't get that, but well done. That was very well noted. What are they doing about a public holiday? That's the only question I get a lot of the time.
It's the only question that I get.
Yeah.
So
will there be a bank holiday?
There are 2 bank holidays currently in May, one at the very start, one at the very end. Understand that there'll be no additional bank holidays, but could one of those other bank holidays be moved to make a long weekend?
I'm sure they will. I mean, and the government won't want, or who knows what government will have in May, but they won't want an additional public holiday because they're actually quite expensive. There was one for the Queen's funeral, and obviously it does suppress economic activity having an additional public holiday.
It's because this coronation's on a Saturday, whereas when the Queen's coronation was on a Tuesday.
Good note, good knowledge. I didn't know it was on a Tuesday. That has escaped me previously. Talking of crowns, there's a new...
Oh wow, good segue.
There's a new Netflix series coming up. Was it the 9th of November? They just put out a little trailer for the new series of The Crown. Should we have a little listen?
In light of the events of the last 12 months, perhaps I have more to reflect on than most.
The royal family is in genuine crisis.
Have royal scandals damaged the country's reputation?
The House of Windsor should be binding the nation together, setting an example of idealized family life. It's a situation that cannot help but affect the stability of the country.
For years, I've called for a more modern monarchy that reflects the world outside.
I don't think it's my behaviour that's threatening its survival. You, as future king, have a duty.
People will never understand how it's really been for me.
There's been a lot of noise around the Crown, hasn't there? There always is, but that noise, I think, is getting louder, partly as the Crown, we're on season 5 now. We are getting closer to the present day.
Yes, closer to the present day. And also, the Queen has just passed away, and a lot of people are saying it should be respectful to that fact. A lot of it all centres around whether or not this is based in reality or whether it is a fictional drama. And I think what we've said before about The Crown is, yes, it is loosely based on historic events. Whatever happened in 1991, whatever happened in 97 with the death of Diana, what happened with the Windsor Castle fire, etc., etc. But all the conversations that happen behind castle walls or inside palace ballrooms are all made up. And there is one particular scene in the first episode of season 5, which has upset not only of the former Prime Minister, John Major, who was the Conservative Prime Minister at the time, but also acting royalty in terms of Dame Judi Dench, she of the James Bond films and many, many, many other amazing acting performances. And she has written a letter to the Times to say that she ain't happy with it either.
Yeah, that letter was published today, and this all Sir John Major. He called the Crown, to quote, a barrel load of nonsense after it emerged that the first episode of the next series contained a fictitious scene in which the then Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, lobbies Major in 1991 in an attempt to force his mother's abdication.
I mean, that's just nuts, isn't it? I mean, at no point was or is Prince Charles ever going to say, I think you should force my mother to abdicate. I mean, he knows the institution he's part of. He knows his mother made that pledge in 1947 to be my life long or short, I will serve. To make up that, it's just quite ludicrous on Netflix's part.
And Netflix has said repeatedly that it is a fictional drama, but the problem is that for a lot of people, and a lot of people that are commentating on it, when you are seeing scenes that are, trying to look like, to recreate what actually happened at the time, it blurs the line between fact and fiction, and people are watching it and believing it as a historical fact. So there are calls for a disclaimer to be put on.
Yes, Judi Dench says that they should put on at the very beginning, this is fictional drama. And yet Netflix is quite happy to say to us, and we've been in touch with Netflix, and that they said, yes, our position is that this is a fictional drama and everyone knows it, but they're refusing to put up anything at the beginning to remind people who may not have seen their statement that it is fiction and not fact.
It was just odd, isn't it? I mean, we were looking at the Queen, the film The Queen, starring Helen Mirren earlier, weren't we? And at the end of that, there's a paragraph that's as part of the credits saying that this is fiction. So I don't. If Netflix is so happy to say publicly The Crown is fiction, why is there a problem about putting that on screen?
Indeed, I mean, I don't really understand it, and actually I think it would be quite useful to know, well, this bit is fact, this bit isn't. And just take it back to the very, very first series of The Crown, when the Queen was having conversations with Winston Churchill, her first ever Prime Minister in 1952, inside, whatever room it was in Buckingham Palace. Well, no one knows what they spoke about. Only the Queen and Winston Churchill knew what they were talking about, and they are both now deceased.
Yeah, we know that audiences between monarchs and their prime ministers are private. They are, we don't get to find out what's said in those conversations, and therefore, everything in The Crown is imagined.
And Lizzie, you make a very valid point about the Helen Mirren drama, in which they were quite happy to put it up, but not so anymore. because in her letter, Dame Judi Dench also not only mentions the John Major issue, she also said that King Charles, as he is now, or Prince Charles as he was then, once suggested his mother's parenting was so deficient that she might have deserved a jail sentence. And in Judi Dench's words, that is both cruelly unjust to the individuals and damaging to the institution they represent. But as I say, we've been in touch with Netflix, and they ain't budging on this one, are they?
So very, very strongly worded letter there from Dame Judi Dench. I mean, these are serious names that we're talking about, aren't they? We're talking about Dame Judi Dench and Sir John Major. You know, we are talking about very high-profile individuals indeed.
Meghan's done another interview talking of contributions to publications. This is in Variety, and talking about, in particular, and we've just been discussing it here, about the death of the late Queen and what it was like being in the UK after that death. And don't forget, they were in the UK in any case at the time, doing a series of charity engagements. We went to London, we were in Manchester in the week that the Queen died. We also they also went to Düsseldorf for the Invictus Games, and they were about to hold a third event, weren't they, for Well Child, when they had to cancel because of the Queen's death.
Yeah, the Well Child Awards, that would have been on Thursday the 8th, which was obviously the day that the Queen passed away, and Prince Harry ended up travelling to Balmoral. But this is a wide-ranging interview with Variety magazine, and they say in the article that some of this had been some of the interview had been conducted before the Queen had passed away, and then obviously if you read the start of the interview, it's touching upon the world mourning the loss of Queen Elizabeth, and talking about Meghan's relationship with the Queen, so that those bits had been recorded afterwards.
And she says she was very honoured to have met the Queen and been able to know her. And she says, certainly in terms of female leadership, she is the most shining example of what that looks like. I feel deep gratitude for being able to spend time with her and to get to know her. And then here's the bit, I think, it's been a complicated time. Yeah, I'd say so.
I'd say that's one way of putting it.
Complicated as in, we were in the UK, Harry's grandmother died, the whole focus was on us. We then had to do that walkabout with William and Kate because we were living in Windsor and so were they, and you could tell from the body language that none of us liked to talk. Would that be a good summary?
I mean, it's very well documented that relations between them and the family are difficult. They've given lots of interviews, so that's no secret. But she does say in this interview with Variety that when she's asked about her relationship with the Queen, that she feels fortunate and continues to be proud to have had a nice warmth with the matriarch of the family.
There was some chat in this interview about that a recent article that she did for The Cut, the New Yorker magazine, and she seems to suggest that she wasn't entirely happy with it or understood that it was criticised. Wouldn't that be right to say? Because she was asked, you've done two major interviews since returning to America, one with Oprah Winfrey and the other with New York magazine. This is the question, by the way, and this is not our words, which some found to be snarky. What has it been like to open up about your life now? And she said that she did the New York, or the Cut magazine, to support Archetypes. That's a new podcast that we've spoken about on this podcast a few times, and focus on our projects. I've had some time to reflect on it, said Meghan. Part of me is really trusting. That's how I move in the world. I have to remember I don't ever want to become so jaded that a piece of me goes away. So despite all of those things, she asked herself, onward, I can survive it. In other words, she didn't think it went particularly well, or she probably acknowledges she didn't necessarily come across particularly well.
And she said at the start of that answer that the story was intended to support Archetypes and focus on our project.
In other words, that was why I did it, and actually it had an entirely different. Because this was the article where the writer was talking about the scent and the candles and the Mexican music wafting in the air, and Meghan ushering her out just as if it was her idea. I mean, it seemed to be that particular author had a slightly raised eyebrow throughout the whole article. This one was a little bit more straightforward, I thought.
Yeah, and she spoke in this interview about the days after that infamous Oprah interview that she and Prince Harry did. She said that she hadn't really seen people in a long time. She was pregnant at the time, and she said that she'd been invited to Gloria Steinemann's birthday a few days after it had aired, and she said the interview had come out maybe a week before. Walking into a room alone is never easy for me, and I remember feeling a bit uncomfortable. She spoke about how she felt generosity and love in the room. So obviously,
she was greeted with warmth and kindness in the room, although she's probably not going to tell us that she was greeted with coldness and disdain. But nevertheless, that's what she said. But she added, and this is, I'm sure, true, the power of sisterhood and female support can never be underestimated.
One other thing I thought was interesting is this docu-series that has had a lot of time in the press about when is it going to air, is it going to be delayed, is it going to be scrapped entirely? Well, it seems from this interview that she confirms that it is going ahead. She said it's nice to be able to trust someone with our story.
Yeah, but didn't she say even if it means it may not be the way we would have told it? Isn't that kind of sort of saying they're not entirely happy with
I don't know. She said we're trusting our story to someone else. She is confirming that it is going ahead.
Happening.
So we had originally thought December, we're still waiting for confirmation on whether that does still go ahead in December or whether that's pushed back. We don't know that. She also,
but surely it's all tied into the book. I mean, because HarperCollins, who have signed the deal for Harry's book, and Netflix, who have signed the deal for this docu-series, one of them is going to want the first bite of the cherry here, and they're probably not wanting the other one to go out many, many weeks or months before they get their money's worth. Surely it's all about the publisher and Netflix wanting to get a pound for their flesh.
Yeah, and there's been questions in lots of publications about whether either or both will be delayed because of potential rewrites in the wake of what's happened.
Or rewrites or just extractions. I mean, I did hear that Harry was basically put down everything that he wanted to put down, and people have been kind of editing and removing sections that they thought might be a little tricky or create too much difficult moments. But maybe following the death of the Queen, they've done some more extractions. Maybe they've put some more back in.
Maybe more's gone in.
Now the Queen has passed, and he wants to sort of get off his chest exactly what went before.
Yeah, we will have to wait and see. One other thing before we skip on to other stories this week is that Meghan was asked, "Would you ever consider going back to acting?" And she said, "No, I'm done." And then she said, "I guess never say never." But my intention is to absolutely not.
Wasn't she also asked, what would you do if your kids said that they want to get into acting? And she said that she'd be, what would you say if your kids came to you in 10 or 15 years' time and said, I want a career in entertainment? She would say, great. Because when you become a parent, you genuinely want your kids to find the things that bring them complete joy. So look out in the future.
But then she goes on to say there are kids, obviously, and they're part of a legacy and a tradition and a family that will have other expectations.
Does she mean her family or does she mean Harry's family? I wonder. Now, talking of Harry's family, the King and Queen consorts have continued there. Well, what's interesting about the way in which, I think both this goes for the King and Queen, but also for the new Prince and Princess of Wales, William and Kate, William and Catherine, however you prefer to call them, they have spent the first period since the Queen's death very much focusing on their core subjects. William did that big event recently about
United for Wildlife,
about the trade in illegal animal products. Kate's been focusing on the early years. We went to that maternity unit with her recently. Camilla, the Queen, has been focusing on domestic violence. Again, a really key piece of work for her. But I thought was quite interesting that this event they went to, their first joint engagement in London, was to a project called Project Zero, which helps those individuals in a certain part of London who are having a very difficult time, particularly through knife crime.
Yeah, and that's focusing on young people, and we know that the King is very, very engaged and focused on this issue and helping young people through his Prince's Trust is one example of that work that he has been long doing.
And as I mentioned to the boss, the director of Project Zero, Stephen Barnabis, actually his charity has very, very similar connections, I think, or very similar aims to the Prince's Trust, which the Prince of Wales set up in 1977 to help those who are disadvantaged. And Idris Elba is one of the most famous supporters and beneficiaries of the Prince's Trust. We caught up with Stephen Barnabis. There's a very interesting tale, isn't there, about when people ask, how do you get the King and Queen to come and visit you? Well, they've got a very interesting tale of exactly how it happened.
Should we let him tell us?
We actually got the notification the Monday before the Queen actually passed away. So the confirmation that they wanted to come and visit, at the time Duchess of Cornwall wanted to visit us, was that Monday before the Queen passed. Then when that happened, we didn't know if it was something that would happen, if it would take place. So we were very surprised when everything and the period of mourning had ended, that they came back to us and said,
as you say, you fast-tracked to the very, very top of the list and became the very first visit in London.
Yeah.
Me and Lizzie were just talking about how it happened as well, how that conversation happened, yeah?
Yeah.
We take you back to June of this year, wasn't it? It was at the Oval Cricket Ground.
That's
and
right.
a suggestion from one of your team.
That's right. So I was presented with an award from the Royal Voluntary Service and part of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee for the work that we do here and at Project Zero. And I took a group of young people along with me and a member of our staff team as well. And Rico was a kind of, if you like, our poster boy of somebody that's come as a young person, moved up to being a youth champion, was not very confident at the beginning. And
hold on a minute, you say not very confident. He basically just jumped on the Duchess of Cornwall and said, "You need to come and visit us."
Exactly. So that's the thing. That was the leap that this young man has made. He came as a very shy young person and no confidence, to him being somebody that can speak for us, talk about Project Zero, represent us at council meetings, sit on steering groups and boards. So I thought he was a prime person to take along to this event, and he did, and he certainly met the Duchess of Cornwall then at the time and asked her straight out for her number. In fact,
sorry, you want to repeat that? He asked the Duchess of Cornwall for her number.
He asked her for her number. He said, "Yeah, come along. You should come and see us at the centre. Can I get your number? I'll give you a bell sometime." It was as on that level that he asked. I crumbled up and I sat down. I thought, "Oh my goodness, you just asked the Duchess of Cornwall for her number." But, it paid off.
Stephen, can I just get you to explain to our listeners what Project Zero is and why you decided to found it? Because it's quite a personal story for you, isn't it?
That's correct, yeah. I mean, Project Zero is all about engaging young people in positive activities. We are about promoting social inclusion and reducing antisocial and offending behaviour. And the headline Project Zero is all about wanting to see a year where there's been 0 deaths of a young person because of knife crime or youth violence. And I've personally lost a cousin back in 2004 due to knife crime. And unfortunately, again in 2019, I lost a second 16-year-old cousin, again through knife crime. So 15 years apart, the situation was still very real, still affecting a lot of our young people. I did have a previous youth centre before, but we didn't own the building and that had to close down because our landlord sold the property. And when I lost a second cousin back in 2019, I was thinking the situation is still very real, affecting a lot of our young people within London and across the UK, in fact. And we needed to continue the work and keep the agenda, keep the situation about knife crime and youth violence alive.
There's some similarities here, isn't there, to the Prince's Trust, or whatever they're going to call the Prince's Trust. Now he's king, of course. But that was founded in 1977 with his Navy pension, wasn't it? Because he was concerned about the opportunities available to young black Londoners, particularly those from disadvantaged groups, and how they might be able to get a sort of step up. And we think of Idris Elba, who's one of the most famous beneficiaries of the Prince's Trust. So you've got some similarities between your group and that.
Yeah,
You?
yeah. I mean, it's all about engaging young people. So anybody that's working with young people and are able to create opportunities or even just a safe space, and that's how we started. It was about having young people having a safe place that they can go and meet with their friends. And we thought, well, look, if we're inviting young people into this space and into this venue, let's also look at the opportunities. Let's look at the next steps for them. Let's look about the long term. You know, I don't want to be providing a provision that's here just for a few months or a short period of time. Let's follow through with our young people. Let's see them into adulthood. Let's help them into good employment. Let's help them with relationships. Let's help them with the next steps in their journey in their lives, you know. So yes, it's similar to the Prince's Trust in that respect in terms of creating opportunities and looking after our young people. But yeah, I strongly believe though it takes a village to raise a child, and so it's all of our responsibilities, not just mine, not just parents. It's all of our responsibilities to look at what's happening for our young people.
And what sort of impact have you noticed in the community since you founded Project Zero?
Well, the last few years for our young people has been very hard hitting. We've moved from the whole situation with regards to Brexit to COVID, to the impact of the war on energy and the cost of living. It has impacted, and we can see the anxieties when young people were locked in for the lockdown period. Anybody that was kind of 15, 16 and 17 when COVID started had a rough time. And as we started coming out of lockdown, and as we started, as we moved into the Outset Centre back in towards the end of 2020, we can see young people come with multiple issues, an increase of mental health concerns, anxieties, lack of motivation in terms of going on to further education or going into employment. And yeah, so we had a real lot of hard work at the beginning of 2021 in terms of engaging with young people that was coming out with all of these multiple issues.
Now, listen, we are really grateful you joined us on the ITV podcast, but you're not actually a stranger to ITV because you featured in that documentary that Camilla did, as she was then, we should now say the Queen Consorts did, when she was promoting her guest editorship of Country Life. And we don't often think of parts of London as country life, but you had quite a major part of that programme, didn't you? You and Rico again.
Yeah, it was very interesting. There was quite a few days of the filming crew coming down to the centre and finding about what we do and meeting our young people and meeting some of our members of staff. So it was a nice project to be involved with. And definitely when they came to visit us, they were very interested in what we do. And that was really nice to see that coming from that documentary and being in part of that, there was a real keen interest in what we provide here and the services that we provide. The projects that cross a number of their interests. So they met a young person that has issue around domestic violence and escape for that. The Queen Consort was very interested in that. They met with Think Found as a partner program that use recycling scaffolding boards to create these planters, and spoke about ex-offenders and the employment opportunities, but also sustainability of and the planet. King Charles was very interested in that, and it was all kind of linked into a lot of things they were interested in. But yeah, being part of that program on the Country Life, I didn't ever think I would be on a Country Life feature, but it all kind of worked and linked into each other. Yeah,
I think you touched on a really good point there, actually. You know, since they've become King and Queen Consort, the engagements that they've been doing have been very much focused on the issues that they have been focusing on for years. I mean, it's no coincidence that for the Queen Consort, her first solo engagement was on domestic violence. The King has covered an engagement on refugees, and then together they've been at this engagement with you at Project Zero, looking at young people and the help we can give to young people. So what do you think for your organisation and for other organisations, having them come and visit you, what kind of a difference does that make for you?
Yeah, I I tell you that on Tuesday, when the Rolls Royce and the car carrying them drove down the little cul-de-sacs of Grange Road and into our courtyard. It was a real honour and a real experience. And I think the exposure and the coverage of the visit has been very beneficial to Project Zero.
So is this the powerful team?
This is the powerful. These are the ladies that keep me in check. Yeah. Would you just tell us a little bit about vibes? It's our most popular room here. Yeah? So if I can introduce you, this is Tommy and this is Joe Van. I'll tell you a little bit about what happens here. That same night, a Tuesday night, we run a youth club. And we had 15 new young people turn up to the youth club on Tuesday night just from the royal visit. So definitely talking about Project Zero, keeping the discussion of youth crime, youth violence on the agenda, and having the King and Queen consort visit us has really been good exposure for us.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because a lot of people say, "Oh God, what does a king and queen visit do? They just come along, they look around, everything smells of fresh paint, and then they go again. What's the point of it all? And what's the point of driving a Rolls Royce down the centre of Walthamstow and almost highlighting you've got the haves and the have-nots?" But I mean, from what you say there, from a very tangible difference they made was you had 15 new people turn up one evening, 15 people that might otherwise have spent the night perhaps getting into some kind of trouble.
Yeah, well, on top of that as well, we had Barncroft Primary School children came along. We had we invited all our youth champions to the event. All our youth engagement team were all at the event. And I can tell you the conversation and the vibes after the visit, they all felt really empowered. They all felt like they were important. They all felt these people, the king and queen of the country, has come down to little old Walthamstow, a little old corner of a state, and has taken the time to come and visit them. And that by itself gave them a sense of importance. And
yeah, because I mean, people don't often see what it was like before and after. And obviously, we go to a fair few of these events, and we see everyone beforehand is a kind of a bit on edge, a little bit nervous because they're not quite sure how it's going to go or what they're doing or how to do it, etc. And at the end of it, you always see like it's almost like someone had sort of sprinkled some glitter over the area, or just given everyone a bit of a lift, and everyone's always very uplifted at the end of a visit like this. You'd agree, wouldn't you, when you go to these events?
Definitely agree. And they are all, we sort of spend a lot of time with them out on engagements, meeting people, and they are very, very good at putting people at their ease. But you mentioned the primary school, and I should mention that when the King and Queen consort arrived, one of those primary school children said to the King, how old are you?
I heard that.
Oh, you'll have to guess. And they came back with the answer 96, which
yeah,
about 20 years older than he actually is.
Puts me about the age of his mother was, doesn't it?
Right.
How old are you, King Charles?
Have a guess. Have a guess.
96. I want it really bad.
You get a decent summer holiday.
But this, when you ask those same children how old I am, they tell me that I'm 70 something. So they see the grey hair in my beard, and then they don't get ages as well.
They've clearly got that massively wrong. That's because right. Actually, people listening to this podcast can't see you, but we can see you, and you look about 24.
I don't look 76, do I?
Definitely not.
And I also clocked some toe tapping from our King and Queen.
Yeah.
They looked like they were having fun.
Well, listen, when you saw those young people and the energy they brought with the performances and the singing and the dancing, you couldn't really help but tap your toes. And they've been rehearsing. They're with us every Saturdays, and they rehearse for a wide range of performances. So we do singing and dancing and drama on Saturdays. We have an organisation called Sugadusis that does that. Yeah, and when you see, and when those young people actually heard about the visit and that they were going to perform in front of the King and Queen, they were ecstatic. And so they really put their heart and soul into it, yeah.
Final question, Stephen. How do you and Rico top this then? Because obviously,
I was just about to ask exactly the same
thing. So,
okay,
you pounce on Camilla as she was then, or the Queen consort, and say, "Come and visit us." What? How do you beat this one?
Well, funny enough, under normal circumstances, I would have said that we would have been looking at our growth and our development and seeing what will come off of this and looking at new opportunities. And all of that is true. And we'll definitely be looking at all of those things. But we've got a challenging year ahead of ourselves. energy bills of the centre is going to go up. We're talking about potentially £30,000 to £50,000 just to cover the cost of heating the building during the next year. So really our next year is a bit more about stability, trying to keep the services that we've got actively happening at the moment, maintaining that, being able to deal with more young people if they want to come and access. And we do believe that we're going to have more young people because of the cost of living crisis and the issues that we have for a lot of our families. So the next year is really about making sure that we are here, we're still here for our young people, and that we've got the funds to secure to keep the centre going. And then hopefully if we can get through that and things start changing, we can really be thinking about the growth and where we take it from there. But we'll definitely are making the best use of the opportunity. And like I said, my email and my messages have been inundated from the visits as well. So it's about following all of those up and looking at the opportunities for our young people.
I mean, it's such an incredibly difficult time for people up and down the country at the moment. Did the Queen and Queen Consort and King talk to you and young people about that when they were visiting?
Oh yeah, they I've been working with young people and doing youth work for over 30 years, and I've met celebrities. I've taken young people to a wide range of different events. I've met VIPs, and sometimes you can kind of see that when you talk to some of them, it will be yes. They're talking, but they're not really listening, not really engaging. But I really felt with the King and the Queen Consort that they really truly listened to what was being said, and you can tell that by the questions that they were asking. You know, somebody would say something and they would have a follow-up question, and they would have another follow-up question. They really did actively listen to what our young people were saying. They really were actively listening to the issues, and they actually were very knowledgeable about the issues as well. The Queen spoke about the issues around domestic violence, and you can see through what she was saying that she was very knowledgeable about the issues and the effects for the young people. I truly believe that they were really interested in what was happening here at Project Zero, and we never know what will come from it again.
Well, listen, it's great to hear about, some of the good things that can come of this visit. And you rightly make the point that it's not just people and businesses that are affected by the high cost of energy at the moment. Charities have to find the money as well. Project Zero WF and you're Stephen Barnabis, which I'm sure they can find you on social media if they need to find you. And if not on social media, you're to be found somewhere near a senior royal asking them to come and visit.
Yes.
So thank you to Stephen, and well done to Rico. I mean, maybe next time that we see Charles and Camilla, we can ask them to come to something that we like. Oi, Queen, fancy coming to visit this?
They could come and join us on the podcast. How about that?
There we go, and that's what we'll ask them. Next time we see King Charles III and Queen Consort Camilla, we will ask them if they want to join us on the podcast. We're going to take a leaf out of Rico's book, and thanks to Stephen for joining us. I think he runs a really, really interesting charity that does a lot of good work. And I was really struck by that, what he said in there, that 15 new people joined that evening on Tuesday night after the King and Queen visited. And as you say, they could have been doing many other things that evening, but as a result of the publicity, they went to Project Zero.
Yeah, people ask us a lot, don't they? What is the point in royal visits and the royal family? And they are shining a light on organisations like Project Zero and the work that Stephen is doing. By shining a light and getting the press coverage that these organisations then do off the back of it means that they can then help more people.
Wish they wouldn't have got that publicity otherwise. And we should probably just remind the child from Barncroft Primary School, the King is not 96 years old.
He is 73. He will be 74 next month. And as we always say,
if you're a kid, that's still pretty old.
At a time when most people will be retired, they've just taken on the top job, and they are not in any way slowing down.
I mean, again, you don't retire when you're a senior member of the royal family. There's one thing you don't get to do. It's almost like job for life.
Well, you look at the late Queen, and we sort of circling back to what we spoke about at the beginning of the podcast. She was welcoming her 15th Prime Minister on the 6th of September and passed away on the 8th. I mean, she really did work right up until her last moments, and something that she
Yeah.
committed to do for her whole life. She really did do that.
And she was not to know, of course, that this particular Prime Minister, her 15th, would be the shortest serving Prime Minister. What's our fact about the Prime Minister? There was a chap called George Canning.
And he managed 119 days, I think.
In what year? 1827. He held the record. In fact, he had it on the Downing Street website. He held the record as the shortest period in time of office for a Prime Minister, 1827. But he managed 100. Did you say 115 days?
119.
5 months roughly, and died in office. But George the Fourth was in charge then. So Liz Truss, despite only managing 45 or whatever it is, 50 days in office, she will have seen 2 sovereigns.
Before we wrap up, as we've been promising to do
You got a
for
really
a while
interesting
now.
fact.
No, you have a really interesting fact
Which is?
about kings and Australia.
Kings. Oh yes. Well, there was that's one thing we haven't spoken about, isn't it? But will the King and Queen go to Australia? Now, in New South Wales, there is a legislative council. Bear with me. That is celebrating its bicentenary in 2024.
Yeah.
So it had its first session in 1824.
This wasn't the fact I was getting at when we started this story.
This is the context.
Okay, fine.
And so there's been a lot of talk about a much anticipated royal visit. Now, this was in the official programme of events for the bicentenary celebrations for the New South Wales Parliament, which is, I should point out, the first parliament that Australia ever had. And they said, we'll have a much anticipated royal visit, without saying who it was, when it was. So I think they said October.
They said October 2024.
Right. So we're presuming that might well be the King and Queen consort. Now, this is the interesting fact.
It might. I would hasten to add that plans are still being very much.
Could be Princess Anne. Could be the Duke of Gloucester. I mean, it could be anyone. But anyway, let's say
if it
were to be the King.
Yes.
Then,
here we go, drum roll.
It would be the first ever visit to Australia by a king, because King George VI didn't make it, King Edward VIII didn't make it, King George V didn't make it, nor did Edward VII. So the first visit of a king to Australia at a time when Australia is having a debate about republicanism.
Potentially.
Anyway,
on that bombshell.
It's a bombshell. Australia will continue that debate about republicanism, but they will continue with this much anticipated royal visit in 2024. But I think someone's going to go before then, don't you?
I think so. I mean, for Australia, they have a new king as much as we have a new king, and they have a relationship with the royal family as much as we do. So yes, I think it would be wouldn't be a surprise if there was a royal visit sooner than October 2024.
And basically, Australia, if you want us, will come. Yes,
definitely.
Right.
We will. Yes, I mean, I can't talk for the royals.
I love Australia, and we will be there very soon. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.